All right. So, hi everyone. I hope I'm audible to all of you. Can you let me know in the chat box if I'm audible or not?
Yes, sir, it's audible.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Shalini. Okay. So, let's start with today's topic. Today is going to be our very first class. Today is going to be our very first session for CCNA 200301. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to networks, what networks are, what are the different criteria through which we are going to assess our networks. And then we are also going to look at the models. Obviously, we won't be able to complete both the models today, TCP, IP, and OSI, but I'll give you an intro of these models and I'll also tell you how they differ from each other uh, in the real world scenarios in the industry, which is considered to be the standard right now. Is it TCP or is it OSI? Okay, so that is what I'm going to talk about today. Understood? So we are going to start with the definition. We are going to understand what networks are. Okay. So for that, I've got another slide set. Let me just show that to you. Okay. So CCNA 200301 and yeah, so there we go. So we're going to talk about networks. Okay. So according to you guys, what is a network? Okay. So I'll explain. Well, this is a definition taken from a very famous book. Okay. Kuros and Ross. So I'm going to talk about networks, and I'm going to first paraphrase this definition. So what is a network? A network is a set of devices that are connected to each other via communication links. Right? Now, these devices are known as nodes. They're also known as end devices. And what do they aim to do? They talk to each other. They try to talk to each other. Okay. And how do they talk to each other? Either through a wired connection or wirelessly. So what do you think? Is that definition right? Is that definition right? Can anyone let me know?
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Anything that you guys would like to add here? Now, in this definition, because this is an old definition, so according to this definition, it says it could be a computer or a printer or any other device. Now, like I said, this definition or this description dates back to early 2000s. And that is when these were the most dominant devices. Yes, we had laptops, but we did not have smartphones. And now if I try to explain this definition through the perspective of modern networking, I can include a lot of devices and I can consider them as nodes. We can consider our smartphones as nodes. We can consider our tablets as nodes. And we can also consider a huge, category of devices also known as IoT devices, right? And there are around 21 billion IoT devices right now. Do you think that, they can also be considered as nodes? What do you guys think? Can I consider them as nodes?
Yes, sir.
Is because they have the capability to talk to the other devices present in your home. They come with networking capabilities, right? So what is a node? A node is any device that can send or receive data. So in earlier descriptions, nodes were just limited to computers, printers, scanners, that's it. But right now we have a lot of nodes. If we talk about industrial plants, there the devices that we work with, they are also capable of communicating with other devices. Well, now it completely depends whether they will talk to other devices through wires or will they communicate with each other through wireless mechanisms. Okay. So in order to explain what a network is, you just need to know a few things. Devices that are going to talk to each other, which are known as nodes. How they are going to talk to each other, that is via some link. Now that link could be what? That link could be a wire or it could be a wireless medium. So now when we talk about wires, we usually talk about copper wires, we talk about fiber wires, and we don't really refer to them as wires. We actually call them cables. Wires are what are inside them, right? So can anyone tell me what kind of cables are there? Is Ethernet and fiber cable the same thing or are they different?
No, sir.
Different.
Yeah, different.
Different in what sense? Like, what is the main difference?
Mode of transmission.
Okay. And what about Ethernet cable and copper cable?
No, sir.
Are they same or are they different?
Yeah, different.
Same.
Yeah, not they're different.
I would say that it's same, so I would say that it is different. I'll explain the concept. Okay. So let me connect my pen. So basically, if you talk about copper cables or fiber cables, both of them are known as Ethernet cables. Now, some of you would think that, I'm wrong, but I'm not. Because Ethernet is actually a standard. Okay. Ethernet is actually a standard in which you have two types of cables. One is copper, which uses electric signals to transmit data. And the other one is fiber, which uses light signals to transmit data. Okay. And basically, when we move ahead in our course and we'll talk about a standard known as 802. It's a project. It's a complete project. It's a model. So inside that, okay, inside that project, you have a standard known as 802.3. Okay. 802.3 is the standard for cabling. And its name is Ethernet standard. In our upcoming classes, we'll also study something known as PoE. Have you guys heard of PoE?
Yes.
Yeah, power over Ethernet.
Power over Ethernet. That also comes under this standard, which is 802.3. Then inside 802.3, we've got multiple. It would be better if you could mute yourselves because this is going on YouTube. Yeah, you can ask your questions. I'll give you time for that. Don't worry. Okay. So Ethernet is the main standard inside which we've got copper and fiber. Okay. And there is going to be a separate class just on Ethernet where we will talk about how these cables work, what is the main difference, how the data travels, what is UTP, what is STP, right? What is a single mode multi-fiber or single mode fiber or multi-mode fiber? We are going to talk about all of that in our upcoming classes, so don't worry. Right now, what I'm trying to explain to you is the meaning of a network. So what does a network contain? A network will contain nodes. We also call them end devices that will try to talk to each other. And how do they talk to each other? Using a medium. Now, what kind of medium could it be? It could be a wireless medium or a wired medium. So when we talk about wired mediums, we are talking about copper and fiber. Now we could also use serial cables, but that is a different concept. Okay. Then how do they talk to each other? You cannot just connect two computers to each other and they'll work. You cannot just connect them through a cable and you will hope that they will work. They will have limited connectivity. You can't consider connection of two computers as a network. You can have them talk to each other wirelessly. That's a different concept. When we talk about wireless concepts, at that time, I'm going to talk about something known as an independent service set. Okay. Now, in most of the cases, they would require something known as a networking device. Okay. So what do we have? We have nodes, which are known as end devices, and we can have different types of nodes, right? We can have different types of nodes. We can have smartphones, we can have PCs, we can have tablets, okay? We can have IoT devices, we can have a lot of things here. So how are they going to communicate with each other? Through a medium. Now, and along with that, you require a networking device. Okay, you require a networking device. Now, there are different types of networking devices and they will work scenario wise. You cannot just use one networking device and hope that it will work in all the scenarios. Okay, so this is what a network is. So I hope this is clear to all of you. Even if you're a complete beginner in the domain of networking, I hope this is clear to everyone, because this is the most basic description. So you don't have to memorize this. All you need to know what a network is. A network will consist of devices that need to talk to each other. How will they talk to each other? Through some medium, and there will be a networking device that will be providing the services. Okay. Now, two things that you are going to hear throughout the course. One is called intra-networking, and the other one is called inter-networking. So what is the difference? What is the difference between inter-networking and intra-networking? Yes, can anyone tell me?
Internet is public and internet works in an organization.
And what about internet? What did you mention about intranet?
Internet works in within an organization itself, not
Okay.
outside it. And internet works publicly.
Okay. So when in a scenario, my organization has different networks, right? My organization can have different networks. So in that case, I can use inter-networking as well. I'll tell you what the meaning is. Okay. So you have a network. Network will have devices. Network will have networking devices. Okay. So during your school time, when you would read computer science books, they would represent networks like these clouds, right? Yeah, we still do that. And then there is another network. Now within the network, when devices are talking to each other, if I've got device 1, device 2, device 3, and at my home, what do I have? I have a device that you call the wireless router. Now, what can happen within my network? My devices can talk to each other. In the other network, the devices can talk to each other. But when devices from one network want to talk to devices from another network, that is called internetworking. It's that simple. It is that simple. Internetworking. When devices within the network want to talk to each other, it's called intranetworking. Okay. Now you guys must be wondering that, you know, at our homes, we have a wireless router. Then how does intranetworking happen? Because some of you who are, you know, experienced in IT, in the IT industry, all of you know that within the network, there is a device called switch, right? So you must be confused, like, what is this happening? What is this guy teaching us? Now, just to let all of you know, the device that we have at our home, what you call a wireless router, that is way different from an enterprise router. When you are talking about Cisco routers, when you're talking about Juniper routers, they are different from the wireless router present at home. And basically, what does your router contain? Your router contains 3 to 4 components inside it. Okay, like you will have a small router component. Because you are able to connect to the internet, attend Zoom sessions, go on YouTube and watch your favorite music video. So for that, there is a component called router. Inside your network, you can share your screen on your TV. You can communicate with other devices inside the network. You can play games inside your network with other family members or your cousins or your housemates. So there is a switching component as well inside your wireless router. Okay. Now, since you call it a wireless router, devices can connect to it. Okay. So there's a component known as AP component. AP stands for access point. Like at my home, I've got a 𝐍𝐞 wireless router. Okay. And I hope everyone can hear me. Is everyone able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Suren, I think you need to reconnect because I don't see your mic connected to the meeting. Okay, so you'll have to reconnect. All right. So you have something called an access point. Now, at my place, I've got a 𝐍𝐞 connection. Okay. And this is my wireless router's name. Okay. In the upcoming classes, I'm going to tell you what do you call it. You can't just call it the name of your wireless router. We call it the access point, and access point's name is known as SSID. Okay, it's called SSID. So that is a topic for our upcoming classes. So just to let you know, our wireless router can do all these things. And then on your wireless router, you can also set up some security configurations. You can make sure that only specific devices can connect to this network. You can increase or decrease the security level of your wireless network. Like you can change it to WPA2 or you can change it to WPA. So for those of you who don't know, these are wireless security protocols. Okay. These are the protocols with which you can secure your network. And we have a full section dedicated to these protocols in our course. So your wireless router also has some security configurations. So you can't just call it a firewall, but through this wireless router, when you go to its dashboard, you can configure a lot of things. Okay. So this is what you can do with your wireless router. Now, this wireless router is completely different from the router, enterprise router that you are going to configure in the organization. This wireless router is completely different from a switch that you will use inside the organization. The access point is right now present in this wireless router. Inside organizations, big organizations, we have individual access points as well. So I'm assuming most of you, you work for some organization and you must have visited your office, even though work from home is going on. I'm still assuming that you would have visited your office maybe once or twice. So you see UFO like things on the walls when you go to your office. You see this, right? Or you see this. So what is that? That is a wireless access point. Okay. You must have seen these devices in your organization. Now, how do they work? I'm also going to talk about that. So what are they? All of these devices, they are networking devices. Okay. So the difference between inter-networking and intra-networking is that with inter-networking, different networks, devices from different networks can talk to each other. Intra-networking is devices within the same network can talk to each other. So that is the difference. Okay. Then we are going to talk about something known as network criteria, a very important topic. So the criteria that I'm going to talk about here, it consists of some factors. Now, these factors are extremely important and they don't just apply to a network. They can apply to every component of the IT industry. If you are a cloud engineer, these three parameters can help you choose the cloud vendor that you want. Okay, or cloud services provider that you want. These three parameters or these three factors can help you decide the security mechanism you want to configure for your organizational infrastructure. These three parameters apply everywhere. Now, in order to explain these three parameters or these three factors, I'm going to take some examples. Okay. So what are these three parameters? Performance, reliability, and security. Performance means if I'm buying a car, if I'm paying a lot of money for it, I want it to perform well, right? I am expecting good BHP, good horsepower from that car. I'm expecting, speed from that car. Okay. And not only that, that is one of the factors. But other than that, I want my car to be reliable. Okay, I get it that it's fast. But if it breaks down every single day, or it breaks down every other day on the road, then that's a big problem. I don't want something that is fast. I want something that is fast as well as reliable, right? And I also want a car that is secure so that, no one can just comes near my car, uses a tool and is able to get inside my car. That is something that should not happen. It should also be secure when it comes to driving it on the road. It should have a good rating. What if a bird is flying and it hits the car? The windshield should not break, right? So that was an example of a car. Now let's try to talk about these three parameters when you are going to select a network. Now, I'm going to give you very simple choices. Let's say for your home, you are going to select a network connection. And I'm not going to name a particular network. I am going to just write ISP1, Internet Service Provider 1 and Internet Service Provider 2. Okay. Now, for the same cost per month, ISP1 gives a performance of 100 megabits per second. ISP2 gives a performance of, or gives you a speed of 70 Mbps. Which one are you going to choose? Yes. Write it down in the chat box. Which one are you going to choose? ISP1 for sure. Everyone is going to choose ISP1. There is no second answer here, right? Everyone is going to choose ISP1. But the kind of answer I was expecting from you was a little different, but that's fine. You'll get on the track very soon. So now let's talk about reliability. ISP1 is cool. ISP1 gives you 100 Mbps, but there is a huge issue with ISP1. It goes into maintenance mode every night from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. in the morning, which means that it is unavailable during this time, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. Now, most of you would say that our working hours are from 8 a.m. to, let's say 7 p.m. So we are not worried. If it's not working after 10 p.m., maybe we can give our devices our break and we can sleep. But then the other ISP, which is ISP2, it also goes into maintenance, but the maintenance is just from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. And that is probably the time when everyone is sleeping. Now, which one are you going to decide? I know everyone is now going to shift to ISP2. Is that right? Is everyone going to shift to ISP2 now? Absolutely. So what I'm trying to tell you is just on the basis of speed, you can't decide which network you are going to choose. Okay. It's like if you're a fan of cars and you're living in a hilly area. Okay. Now you see a Lamborghini and you say that you are going to buy that car because the speed is great, the performance is awesome. But in hilly areas, is that car reliable? Not at all. No, right? Then you have to think of a car that gives you high performance as well as, it is reliable. Now let's talk about security. Let's talk about security. Now, since ISPs are what? ISPs are company. For example, Airtel is an ISP. Reliance Jio is an ISP. Okay. So ISP1 recently suffered a data breach. I hope everyone knows what a data breach is. When hackers are able to hack into their database and they are able to retrieve information. They are able to retrieve information. So just to let you know that, after I completed my CCNA and CCNP, I moved into cybersecurity, and that is my main line of work. But yes, I started my career with CCNA and CCNP. So obviously networking is what helped me. And then because I had those concepts, so it was very easy for me to move into cybersecurity. So just to let you know, and just to, raise some awareness among everyone, even though you guys are preparing for CCNA, I know that, but there is a website called Have I Been Pwned? So you must have heard that in 2021, Domino's data got breached. So the customer's information was made public. So there is a website called Have I Been Pwned? So this is very helpful. Why? Because it will show you whether your email or your phone number was found in a data breach or not. So a lot of companies suffer data breaches. So it's better to find that your email, if your email or your phone number was involved in that, so that you can change that password. Okay. So mine was found in 9 data breaches. Okay. So what was I saying? Yes. So ISP once data was found in a data breach. But when it comes to ISP2, ISP2 has not suffered a data breach yet because they are very particular with the data of their customers. So finally, you have to make a choice. Finally, you have to make a choice. Which ISP will you go with? And guys and girls, just give me 1 minute, okay? Just a few seconds because someone is at the door and I just have to open the door, okay? I'll be back. Till then, you guys decide the answer. I'll be back. All right. So sorry about that. So you guys mentioned that you'll go with ISP2 and that is the right decision. Okay. So let me quickly explain what performance, reliability, and security are. Now, because you are going to become a network engineer, so I have to explain what performance would mean to you. Now, you are going to work for an organization and you will work with devices. Now those devices should be state of the art. State of the art means that they should be new, right? New in the sense that they are of either the latest series or a series. They should have the operating systems that are relevant in today's scenario. Okay, for example, if I give you a Cisco router from early 2000s, it will still work, but is it relevant in today's scenario? What do you guys think? Is it relevant in today's scenario? No, right? I mean, you will be able to work with it, but there are a lot of features that would be missing. So what will you invest in? You will invest in new. Okay, you will invest in new devices. You will invest in devices that are relevant in today's world. So the kind of networking devices you have, and along with that, your skill set will contribute to the performance of the network. So if you are good at configuring, the network, the networking device, the router or the switch, whichever you have been assigned to work on, if you configure them properly, that would lead to better performance. So that is what you need to know about. Okay, so that is what performance is. After performance, we have something called reliability. Okay, so what is reliability? Reliability means whether the devices will work 24/7, 365, or will they fail. Now, me and all of you, we know that there is no device in the world that can work 24/7, 365. There is nothing in this world that comes with 100% guarantee. When they give you a guarantee, they will give you a 99 point some percent guarantee. They will never give you 100% guarantee. Am I right? So devices can fail and that is okay. All right. I hope you're all getting my point. Devices can fail. Now the thing is, the question is, if one device fails, how can you switch to the other one so that loss is minimized? Did you understand my point? Did everyone understand my point? So for example, in my network, let's say I have a router. Now this router is connected to a switch and I have multiple PCs. So this router is going to connect to the ISP router. Okay. Now, if it fails, so what is going to happen? The connectivity is lost. Now my devices cannot communicate outside the network. And that is a big issue. Now, what can you do in such a scenario? Right? What can you do in such a scenario to make sure that the loss of connectivity is minimized? Are you going to purchase another router? Yes. What you can do is you can purchase another router. But then how are you going to configure it in such a manner that it starts working when the first one fails? So that is what is known as reliability. Are you getting my point? Now, if I have to explain it to you in another term, what I can say is, see, I'm taking your class. Now, I'm not the best teacher, but let's say I am the best at what I do, at what I teach. This means that my performance is very high. But if the classes are not being held for weeks, for months, am I a reliable person? Am I a reliable person? Tell me. No, right? I'm not. So this means that I'm not going to be chosen by the students. Because when someone has to choose me, when someone has to take my batch, they need to take into account all the parameters: performance, reliability, as well as security. So reliability in terms of networking means that the devices can fail. Devices go through wear and tear. That is understood. But how can you make sure that loss of connectivity is minimized? How can you make sure that your customers are retained? So that is what reliability is. Okay. And in our upcoming classes, we are going to study two main reliability protocols. One is called STP for inside switches, and then one is called FHRP, first hop redundancy protocols in routers. Clear? So that is what reliability is. So any doubts in what I just talked about? Any questions related to this? I've given you the ability to unmute yourselves. Any doubts related to this? If anyone has any question related to this, please ask me. Now, if you have a question about OSPF or RIP or EIGRP, that is for the upcoming classes. If you have any questions related to what I'm teaching right now, please unmute yourself and ask me. No? Okay, no worries. I'll proceed further. Now, the next factor that we have to consider is security. So what is security? Security means that when you are configuring your networking devices, you need to make sure that the data that travels through these networking devices all the way to the PCs, all the way to the end devices, no one is trying to compromise that data. Now, how can data be compromised? There are three factors that come inside security. One is C, the other one is I, the next one is A. So C stands for confidentiality. Confidentiality. I stands for integrity. A stands for availability. So can anyone tell me the difference between these three terms? Yes, and then you can include N as well. N stands for non-repudiation. But then we are not going to go into that detail in CCNA. Okay, right now. So yes, Shrutika, would you like to explain any of these three terms: confidentiality, integrity, and availability? Can anyone explain the difference between these three terms? Okay, I'll explain quickly. So what is confidentiality? Confidentiality comes from this word called confidential. Confidential comes from this word called confident. Okay. Now, if two people are talking to each other, it's our private call. Mine and Abhishek's private call. What if someone is able to hear that call? If we are sharing something confidential with each other, if we are sharing something private with each other, someone else is able to find out. So is that a problem? Yes. So confidentiality means that data should only be received by those devices that are intended to receive it. Okay. If I have to send a personal message to Abhishek, only Abhishek should receive it. No one else should be able to get that message or see that message. So that is called confidentiality. Integrity. Now let's suppose I am talking to Abhishek. Okay. I send him a message. Now all of a sudden in between someone shows up. Aditya shows up. Okay. My message was, hey Abhishek, can you send 500 rupees to my account? My account is adhirath@abc. Now what Aditya does is he changes that 500 to 5,000 and changes the account from Adhirath to Aditya@abc. So what am I doing? I am modifying the data. I am modifying my data. So this means that I am corrupting the data. So making sure that data is not changed by anyone, that's called integrity. That's called integrity. And then finally, we have something called availability. Availability means that the services should be available to the people. The services should be available to the people. Now, for example, let's say I am an attacker. And what I'm doing is I'm working for a company. Now that company is a rival of Flipkart. Okay. Now, when Flipkart has a sale, obviously everyone is going to go to Flipkart and buy tons and heaps of items during that sale period. So what will I do to make sure that Flipkart does not make a lot of profits? I will send a lot of messages to Flipkart website. I'll keep on sending multiple messages to Flipkart website. And what is going to happen? The site is going to go down and genuine people will not be able to access it. So that is called denial of service. So making sure that the service, the networking device is working when it is supposed to, that's called availability. So these three terms, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, we are going to discuss them in detail when we talk about security concepts in our course. Okay. So I hope everyone got to understand the difference between performance, reliability, and security, and how they are helpful for creating a network or for choosing a network. So is that clear to all of you? Is that clear to everyone? Any doubts here? If you have any doubts, you can unmute yourself and ask me.
I have one doubt. Basically, the confidentiality and integrity look same. Means data should not be
Confidentiality.
interpreted by any other one.
No, confidentiality means that no one can see my private data. No one can read my private data. Integrity means no one can modify my private data.
Okay.
Okay, that is the difference. Clear, Ankur?
Yes, it's clear.
Okay, great. Okay, so that was the very basic foundation of computer networking that I just discussed with you. Now, after that, we are going to talk about models. Obviously, I won't be able to complete the models in one day because every layer takes 1 day, like 1 hour. Every layer would take 1 hour. So let's just find out why we require models. And the models that we are going to work with here are known as layered models. So in our daily life, you might realize, or you might not have realized this till now, but we use a concept of layers. Now, to take a very simple example, I'll show this diagram to you. These days, you don't send a letter to anyone. It's rare. Only our fathers or our parents or our grandparents would do that. What you can do in order to understand this better, you can take a case of emails. Okay. So here, let me explain how a letter is sent. So you are the sender. You are the sender. You are going to write a letter, put it in an envelope, and drop it in a mailbox. Okay. You're going to drop it in a mailbox. That is what you're going to do. Now, your letter is not going to be magically received by the receiver or your friend or your relative. It will take time. How? After it is written, it is put in a mailbox. Once it is put in the mailbox, what is going to happen? A postman is going to take it from the mailbox and carry it to the post office. From the post office, it is going to be delivered to the head post office, the main post office, the state-wise post office. Okay. And then depending on where the receiver is, now your receiver could be living in a different country, your receiver could be living in a different state. Based on that, logistics are going to be decided. What are logistics? Like, how are you going to send your letter? How is the post office going to send your letter? Is it going to be through train, a plane, or via road, or via sea, like via ship? After that, it might take days, it might take hours, it might take months, and then it is going to be delivered at the recipient's post office. Not where that person lives, but if it's a cross country letter, then it will be delivered at the port. If your receiver is living in a different state, then it would be delivered at their main state office, the head state office, the head post office of that state. After that, it is going to be delivered to the post office, which is in the vicinity of a receiver's area. And then the postman is going to put that in the mailbox. Now the receiver one day would check their mailbox and find out that they have got a letter from you. They'll read it, and yeah. So this is the whole process. So what is being done here? The whole work has been divided into several layers. Okay. The whole work has been divided into several layers. So you've got a higher layer, a middle layer, and a lower layer. The higher layers are concerned with you, the users. Okay. The middle layers involve postmen who are going to take that letter from one place, deliver it to other. And the third, which is the lowest layer, that talks about logistics, how your letter is going to travel from one place to another. Okay. Now, let me ask you this question. If I remove one layer, will the receiver still be able to receive the letter? No, the receiver won't be able to receive the letter now. Why? It's because every layer is dependent on the other layers. You remove one, the whole process of communication is put to a halt, is put to a stop. Now you can't do anything at all. So that is the reason why concept of layers are important. Now this concept of layers applies to computer networking as well. Why? Because when networking was introduced, it was assumed, well, it's everywhere on the internet. You can find that out. You can go and check websites. So the Defense and Research Project Agency of the United States, they claim to create networks. Okay, in early 1970s or in mid 1960s, they mentioned that they created the concept of network, and they used this concept for communication within their own departments. Now, at the same time, any other country would also have created the concept of computer networking. But the biggest problem was that when communication had to happen, every country, every organization had their own rules for communication. Nothing was standardized. Nothing was standardized. So that was turning out to be a very big issue. Just like when we have to talk to each other, we have to decide upon a standard. For example, this batch is going to be delivered in English. That's the medium of communication for us right now. If I talk to you in Punjabi or if I talk to you in Hindi, some of you will be able to understand, others might not be able to do that. That is going to be a problem. That is going to be an issue. The same thing was happening when computer networking was introduced newly all across the world. Some countries had their own standards, some countries had their own rules. So to unify all the standards, to make sure that everyone would speak the same language, I'm not talking about English or any other language, I'm talking about so that everyone was on the same page, so that everyone could use the same rules and same protocols for computer networking, models were created. Okay. So the first ever model that was created was known as the OSI model. So all across the world, there is an organization known as International Standards Organization. If you work for an IT company, or if you work in the IT industry, or even if you work in the finance industry, or if you work for school, or if you work for a bank, you might have or you might not have heard it, but there is an organization and a lot of standards from this organization, ISO, International Standards Organization. A lot of standards from this organization are used in the industry. Now, one of these standards that it created for computer networking was known as the OSI model. Now, OSI stands for Open Systems Interconnection. What does OSI stand for? OSI stands for Open Systems Interconnection. So it was introduced in 1970s. Okay. Now, this model explained the concept of computer networking in a layered wise manner. So there were around 7 layers of this model. Okay. There were around 7 layers of this model. Application, presentation, session, transport, network, data link, physical. A very comprehensive model, a very thorough model, but at the same time used to be very confusing for network engineers or for beginners in this field. Why? Because it was a theoretical model. So in our upcoming classes, starting from next week, we are going to study each and every layer. We are going to study each and every layer. Right now, we just have 5 more minutes. So I just want to talk about what are these models? What is OSI? What is TCP/IP? So the first ever model was OSI, and there are 7 layers inside this model, and every layer has its own functions. So you can see we start with physical, read all the functions of physical layer, then we'll go to data link layer, understand what kind of formats are followed in this layer. go through the whole concept of data link layer. We'll do that for all the 7 layers. So it's going to take a whole week to complete the OSI model in order to understand